Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Throughout the Five Nights at Freddy's series, these four have been a constant. Sometimes swapped around, sometimes a little different. Sometimes one or the other is missing, but the band always stuck together. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Even when sister location dropped Chica, eventually she rejoined and the cycle continued. Until Security Breach, where FNAF took a new spin on the band by adding two new characters. Roxanne Wolf, a unique character who at least seemed pretty similar to Foxy, and our star today, Montgomery Gator. And yes, comparing the two directly, Monty was the odd one out. Monty was the first new and true replacement band member to step into the franchise, replacing boring old busted Bonnie with this killer cool croc-like, but actually Gator, bassist. It was a huge change, and no doubt anyone living in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's would feel that change. Imagine having one of your favorite characters seemingly replaced by someone who came out of nowhere. But the truth is, Monty didn't come out of nowhere. He isn't a new character, as revealed in Secret of the Mimic. And I'm not talking about masks or books or side characters, we're talking about a mascot lost to time. It turns out, Monty is a much bigger character in the grand scheme of Freddy's in-game lore. Monty is not a new character created for the Pizzaplex, he's a long-forgotten character thrown over in a harsh takeover and brought back at the bequest of the Pizzaplex. And who then crashed and burnt spectacularly, and in a way, possibly by his own hands. So today we're discussing the history of Montgomery Gator, the jolly Jugband player, his rise to rockstar status, and how it went so terribly wrong, and how history managed to repeat itself. So where is the beginning? Well, long before the Pizzaplex, far, far long ago in the 1970s, or perhaps even earlier, there was a company known as Murray's Costume Manor, a successful company that fabricated mascot suits, parade floats, foodstuff, and even seemed to own a plethora of characters who they licensed out, and characters they designed for other brands, such as the earliest known Chica. One of the companies they worked with was Fazbear Entertainment, which was running a successful Fredbear's Family Diner and planning on opening up a larger business with the help from MCM, even building a demo restaurant in the basement R&D department. The two companies were very linked up and locked into a tight contract. But that wasn't the only thing they did. There was also a character shared between the two, and that was Jugband Monty, a banjo-playing green and yellow gator with a sharp, sparse-toothed smile, overalls, and a large straw hat. From what we see in Murray's Costume Manor, it looks like they owned Jugband Monty outright, from his statue in the display area and his cutouts and posters propped around the facility. However, they were likely licensing him out to Fazbear Entertainment for use. There's a Springlock Monty prototype suit in the R&D department showing that he was being considered for their upcoming restaurant, and a parade float of him as well. While it's not specified that the Monty float is for Fazbear Entertainment, you can actually link up the floats with the four companies who hired MCM to make them, and sure enough, Monty's the only one that fits with Fazant's order. So, while a Murray's character, Monty was getting a head start on stepping into the Freddy's brand, and as a significant character too if he was getting a Springlock suit and a float. The latter perhaps to celebrate the grand opening. Another thing to note is the mystery of David's storyteller panel and what that means. See, Edwin Murray, the owner of Murray's Costume Manor and inventor behind most of what they built, and Fiona Murray, his wife and the creative genius behind many of the character designs, including Chica the Chicken, had made their son a pedestal in his bedroom with recordings of their voices to tell him an automatically generated story with tapes. Odds are Edwin himself made it specifically after Fiona passed, as Fiona was definitely the type of mother who would have just read to David. But this story involves 6 characters: a bear, a bunny, a chicken, a fox, a gator, and a dog. The bear, bunny, chicken, and fox are easy to guess. The gator would be Jugband Monty, and the dog would be Bub, a rather unknown character who would have been a Springlock suit alongside Monty at the new restaurant. But she has seemed to have disappeared over the years, and yes, it was a she. I was pretty shocked too. Now, it's unclear if this pedestal story was made recently, and is in reference to these many shared characters, as the story ends with the 4 of them starting a band, or if the Murrays have been telling this story for years and actually owned all of the characters before Fazbear Entertainment got involved. Though we only have real evidence of them owning Foxy, Monty, and Bub, and having worked on creating Chica. Freddy and Bonnie likely were Fredbear's own, which would make sense, so I'd go out on a limb and say that the story is more recent, and it's just a reference to all of these characters David likely grew up with. But that doesn't change a thing about Monty's bright future. Despite being in a Jugband with Mr. Hippo, a character who became quite mediocre with age, and frogs who looked like Happy Frog, Monty was the one who was about to become one of Freddy's biggest characters, standing alongside Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy as Freddy's friend and ally. But that's when things took a turn. After the death of Fiona and later David, Edwin's life took a nosedive and the work being done for Freddy's ground to a halt. Phasant head W.A., William Afton, pounced instantly and used the shackles of their contract to seize all of MCM's available assets, including their characters. They then continued on by making their new business without Edwin or any Murray name attached. But for some reason during this transition, only 4 characters continued onward to Freddy's, the 4 that became the main band. Monty and Bub were both left behind and forgotten for years, with neither showing up for decades afterwards. So far, there's not really been a reason why it was that Monty was abandoned, though I would levy one of 2 guesses for what it could have been. Firstly, it could have just been that Jugband Monty simply wasn't as appealing as some of the other characters. Comparing first mate Foxy and Party Time Chica's softer designs to Monty's beady-eyed, larger mouth frame is a stark comparison. I mean, it's possible that Fazbear Entertainment just simply wasn't that interested in Monty and were only going along with the character at Edwin's insistence. As he seemed to have a fondness for him, that also could have been the case. Secondly, and the more likely reason that I believe, is that Monty was simply too recognizable as a character connected to Murray's costume Manor, and it was an executive decision to strike him from the record and bury him like they did with the company they seized him from. Chica was designed by Fiona, but was known for being a part of her own restaurant. Foxy was probably more known for his puppet show than specifically Murray's. But Monty was all over MCM. Monty was practically the figurehead of MCM. Well, kind of. That contract was devious, and Fazbear Entertainment was still looking to seize the mimic technology that Edwin had built, so they didn't need anyone asking questions, and the easiest way to do that, make sure MCM is a fixture of the past. And thus, Monty was booted, out of sight, out of mind. Either way, that was it. Monty was right on the path to becoming a big deal, and then he was erased from the equation. Left behind when Freddy and his band became the hit sensation. Decades passed. The 80s, the 90s, 2000s, Freddy's opened and closed like pizza boxes and burned just as easily. Fazbear Entertainment crumbled and was then rebuilt by unknown forces, and with it came a new drive to separate themselves from the Freddys of yesteryear and get the franchise back on its feet. Which started with video games and PR stunts, and then led into the building of Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, a huge entertainment complex with mini-golf, laser tag, go-karts, and even a daycare. And even a super high-tech animatronic rock band led by robots smarter and supposedly safer than anything at the old locations. Not that those rumors were true, of course. But at this time, Fazbear Entertainment made a choice, and that choice was to bring back some of their unused characters, many of which were connected to Murray's, back from the dead to be featured in the Pizzaplex. Likely because those characters wouldn't be as connected to the old brand image that they were trying to shake. Likely nobody even remembered MCM by then. They brought back Big Top the Ticketmaster, who was already reinstated as the character of Music Man, as DJ Music Man and put him in the arcade. They brought back the Moon Man mascot and the character of the Sun and Moon daycare attendant and stuck him in the daycare. They even brought back Dead-Eyed Roxy and Pirate Roxy, 2 possibly related characters found in MCM, and melded them into Roxanne Wolf, a brand new member and Foxy's replacement. And then they brought back Jugband Monty, though he was largely different. Now referred to only as Monty, or Montgomery Gator, Monty's design was given an overhaul, including a buff build, a cool mohawk, snakeskin-like patterned pants, or legs that looked like them, and a full set of chompers. In fact, unlike the DJ and the daycare attendant, Monty was designed like a Glamrock. like one of the regular band members. But unlike Roxy, he wasn't initially planned to be one of the performing animatronics. Well, not on the front stage. He was instead settled into Monty's Gator Golf, the swamp-themed mini-golf attraction, one which, despite his major changes from Jugband Monty, reflected those bayou beginnings. Now, it's never been confirmed if the Choose Your Own Adventure book VIP is canon, but if it is, then that means Monty originally had a swampy maze that he chased visitors through. Again, can't say that that was actually the canonical backstory, but I wanted to mention it. But as for backstories, Monty is given a fresh one in his Dark Ride. One that plays into his past, save scrubbing MCM off the label. Once upon a time, a young gator named Monty lived in a swamp, playing his banjo in his one-man jug band, sans hippos and frogs. When one day he was spotted by the Glamrocks, specifically Glamrock Bonnie. Glamrock Bonnie handed over his bass, and Monty was welcomed into the band, with Roxy giving him a makeover and him becoming the new bassist for the band and a big star. This story, however, is not true, but a colorful cover to explain why Monty joined the Glamrocks. The real story, though, is a lot darker. I think this is a good time to bring up Monty Gator's personality. See, Jugband Monty really didn't seem to have a personality. He looked jolly whenever we see him depicted, but he was just a mascot, a character. Monty is a sentient AI. He, like the other Glamrocks, have thoughts and feelings, and while they're supposed to have programmed personalities, they often go off of what they're supposed to be. Chica's supposed to love food, but she's obsessed, even eating trash. Roxy is supposed to be cool and beautiful, but she's extremely self-conscious and can be a bully, lashing out due to her own insecurities. And Monty, well, he acts pretty close to an actual alligator, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Despite looking sleepy and lazy in cartoon depictions, Monty has a red-hot temper and is often heard breaking things in his room. He smashes things easily too, charging through gates and breaking down doors. He also can be a little less-witted at times, yelling out threats like, "You can hide, but you can't hide."
"You can hide, but you can't hide. I will find you."
And if VIP is canon, doing things like setting up obvious traps and falling into ones at his own hands and mouth. And when he gets the scent of someone, he can almost go feral, hunting them down, even if he gets damaged in the process. And also, we know there's a shade of envy. In Monty's golf minigame, we see his desires to run the band while Freddy is thrown in the trash. And since this contrasts sharply with the Monty as depicted in the Pizzaplex ads, I think this is a look at Monty's true desires. A Glamrock just like the others, who was perfect, but off the stage and relegated to a golf course. Pumping with all his heat and frustration and forced to tap a tiny ball around, it could be maddening. Like I said, Monty was merely another animatronic in the Pizzaplex, kept to his attraction. We don't even really know how he felt or feels about being the golf guy, but we do know that Monty had a lot of anger. We don't know when it first showed up, but we know it was there. We know he wanted something more, and more came. One night, Glamrock Bonnie entered Monty Golf and disappeared, never to be found again. Someone broke up his body and moved it into the back of his bowling alley, where they then staged a scene that was never found. And with Bonnie gone, the Pizzaplex staff decided that understudy and brief replacement Monty was about to go the distance and become the new bassist. The place was renovated. Monty's claws were replaced with bass-playing claws, and he received headshots and merch, and his very own green room in Rockstar Row. He went from a side piece to on the main stage in only a matter of days. But what actually happened to Glamrock Bonnie? Well, this isn't the trial of Monty Gator, I'm saving that for another day, but the evidence against Monty having done it is irrefutable. 1. It happened at Monty Golf. 2. Glamrock Bonnie had the same damage to him done as Monty did when he falls off the catwalks. We'll get to that later. 3. Glamrock Bonnie was on a rug not found in Bonnie Bowl, likely what he was moved on. 4. Paint transfer shows that the person who clawed Bonnie's chest had green fingers, not green claws. The claws would have gone into the wound, the fingers rubbed the side of it and transferred paint. 5. Monty is shown easily clawing other objects in a similar way to Bonnie's claw marks. 6. Help Wanted 2's bowling animations show Monty smooching Bonnie. 7. Monty's dark ride shows Glamrock Bonnie getting sucked into Monty's tornado and looking suspiciously like he's falling. And 8. The neon lamp that I will mention later. That's sort of an ironic thing, but that seems to be a nod. Now, I won't say for sure that Monty did Bonnie in, but I will say that Monty had no problem in wearing his sunglasses and making them his own. No hesitation, constantly adjusting them, proudly pulling them down to wink or glare, like they belonged to him. So yeah, there's a lot to suggest that Monty was directly involved. No wonder Fazent wanted to keep it nice and tidy. But regardless, Monty was suddenly in a much better position. Finally, he was a big deal. Bigger than Bonnie, almost as big as Freddy. He should have been reveling in it, right? Well, no. He kinda got into that rock star lifestyle, crashing hotel rooms, doing what he wanted, missing shows. Except the hotel room was his room, and the performances were mandatory for a robot. Monty was playing a dangerous game. But obviously he was successful, so Fazbear Entertainment didn't make any known efforts to replace him, simply working around him. And with that, Monty finally returned to his rightful place as one of Fazbear Entertainment's most popular characters and joined the Freddy band at last. But it didn't last. A woman named Vanessa, possessed by a virus known as Glitch Trap, who was acting an awful lot like late owner and serial killer William Afton, barged into the Pizzaplex through sketchy means and infected the animatronics there before setting up shop where they began to kidnap and kill kids and likely killed any workers who got in their way. And before you ask, yes, Monty could have been controlled by Vanny when he attacked Bonnie, but no, I don't think he was, for a few reasons. 1. Vanny had no reason to kill Glamrock Bonnie, as she never used him for anything. 2. She wouldn't have set up the slip and fall scene because she would have known how silly that was. And 3. She had full security clearance, so she could have taken Glamrock Bonnie's remains downstairs to be burned in a furnace and disposed of him for good. It just doesn't fit. And framing Monty also wouldn't make much sense. But that's not important. What's important is that Vanny and Glitch Trap's wave of terror hit the Pizzaplex, and it was only a matter of time before things went south. One night, a boy named Gregory ended up in the Pizzaplex and teamed up with Glamrock Freddy, who is in safe mode, to try to get Gregory out of the Pizzaplex and away from Vanny and Vanessa, both personalities. The Glamrocks were promptly taken on by Vanessa to hunt Gregory and began to dog him around the Pizzaplex. Monty himself smashing through a fence and trying to break down a security office door. With the animatronics tailing him relentlessly, Gregory had little choice but to come up with a plan to deal with them. A plan that Freddy was somehow both on board with and completely oblivious to. Upon hearing about Monty previously having an accident on the catwalks, Freddy nudges Gregory into doing something about him. Indeed, Monty had a previous spill from the catwalks when he fell for an unknown reason and broke his legs. Despite this, Monty spent a good deal of time stalking around up there, likely so he could avoid mingling with the visitors to his attraction. And when Gregory gets up there, Monty comes in for an ambush and begins to chase him around the maze of catwalks as Gregory shoots golf balls into the splash bucket and Monty jumps around using his dark ride carts to move about the place. Until Monty catches up and Gregory presses the button to drop the splash bucket, which lands on Monty. Monty catches it, but the catwalks collapse beneath him and he falls hard, crashing to the floor, banged up, face smashed, and totally bisected at the waist. Gregory claims his bass-playing claws and leaves, but Monty doesn't stay down. Angrier than ever, the legless Monty now crawls his way through the Pizzaplex, looking to shred Gregory to pieces with his bared claws, the non-bass claws that were left behind. Another thing that always comes up when we're talking about whether or not Monty attacked Bonnie is the belief that Monty did not have claws before he had the bass-playing claws, but this is kind of actually evidence that he did, because the bass-playing claws are removed and yet Monty still has claws, so keep that in mind. Whether it is because of his programming or possession, Monty continues his pursuit. Though knowing Monty, likely his anger would have kept him going regardless. But alas, Gregory is able to escape, and Vanessa too abandons the Pizzaplex, leaving the animatronics behind. At this time, a large earthquake hit the Pizzaplex, which was likely not an earthquake and instead the blob moving out of the sinkhole when Glitchtrap and Vanny were removed from the equation. The Pizzaplex, built cheaply and with shoddy means, collapsed in on itself, leaving it in severe disarray. Fazbear Entertainment made meager efforts to rebuild before abandoning the location, likely only feigning efforts so they could write it off as unsalvageable and get the giant insurance payout. You know, listed as an earthquake, thus an act of God, ergo money, money, money. Monty was left to deteriorate further, crawling around in the Pizzaplex waiting for something to stumble upon him, and eventually that was young Cassie, who had been lured there by a mimic pretending to be Gregory. Monty locks on to Cassie early on and begins to chase after her, knocking her deeper into the Pizzaplex and stalking her around the broken-down Monty Golf. He's degraded. No more cocky lines or goofily muddled threats. He just bellows and barks. He's become totally rabid. A sharp contrast from Roxy, who still has her mind intact, and Chica, who is already succumbing to her food obsession before her shattering. Monty is also capable of submerging himself in water. Somehow he doesn't immediately short out from this and instead uses this as his advantage to stalk prey from below, returning to alligator routes that shouldn't even be programmed in. But this is where Monty's final downfall comes swiftly. Cassie must activate the electricity to a door to escape the flooded hallway, but doing so activates an old Glamrock Bonnie neon sign which electrocutes the still submerged Monty, and he thrashes before sinking to the bottom. Now, there is a slim chance that this harsh shock didn't immediately fry his internal mechanisms, but it doesn't look good for Monty. And odds are, even if he did survive this, in the state he's in, he might never be safe to rebuild. He's just too far gone. Now, that's technically where the story ends, but not where the video ends. Oh no. Because the whole point of this video was the rise and fall and the rise and fall, and the cause. And while it would be so easy to pin it on Freddy's and Fazbear Entertainment alone, Monty's delicate situation is almost his own doing, and a bitter reflection of Edwin Murray's own mistakes. Monty likely had no idea of what happened at MCM, and yet how ironic that he targets and takes out Bonnie, the favored character of William Afton, who was not only the instigator of MCM's collapse, but likely the driving force steering away from Monty's rise to fame, unintentionally spiting the man who had such a hand in his character's disappearance from the limelight. And yet, it was this incident that likely sealed Monty's fate for good. See, we know Vanny was controlling the animatronics at the Pizzaplex, but she focused on the Glamrocks first and foremost. Had Glamrock Bonnie still been in the equation, and since he is a bunny, as Vanny and Glitchtrap both resemble, they probably wouldn't have been anywhere near as interested in Monty. He might have just been largely left alone in his golf course. We know at the very least that had Monty not replaced Bonnie, he wouldn't have gotten his upgrades, which made him a target and likely enhanced his possession at the hands of Glitchtrap. Monty might have not gotten shattered like he did. Sure, he would have taken damage, but he wouldn't have had such a massive fall. A fall caused by his own envy. Envy that, maybe, could have been caused by the fact that he was a new or forgotten character. Maybe Monty does know that Jugband Monty was a character from Fredbear's yesteryear. Maybe he genuinely believes this is his moment. And it was. And he took it, and it took him out. And throughout this, all of this, we could say that Monty is a victim to circumstance. There were plenty of incidents where we could pinpoint another party at fault, but whenever Monty had a chance to turn things around, he didn't. When Monty finally had the sentience to make his own decisions, look at the ones he made. And not only that, when he did have the chance to be on stage, to be beloved, and to make a name for himself, he didn't. He let his anger take over him. He refused to perform despite us knowing he wanted to be the top dog. He wanted the position, but he wanted to wear it, not be it. He could have connected with kids and got himself a fan base of people who saw him as more than just Bonnie's replacement, but he didn't. Whatever he wanted, it wasn't what he wanted. He didn't think ahead, just like Edwin Murray didn't when he signed his contract, doomed from the get-go and not learning from past mistakes. But of course he couldn't. How can you learn from a history when it's been stricken from the record? You don't, and it repeats itself. And shall Monty return again, what's the chances that we find him falling to the rabbit once more? Well, maybe we'll see. But for now, that is the tale of Monty Gator, a long-forgotten character in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's who had a brief rise to relevance and no less than 2 dramatic falls that landed him back on square one. But you know what they say, 3rd time's a charm, right? Maybe for Monty. Thank you for watching.